Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I am Nathan Shields, and today, good buddy, friend of the program, longtime guest, however you say that, because he's a listener and a guest. Will Humphreys is joining me today. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Nathan. I'm doing amazing. As always, it's a pleasure to be on your show. I love this show, and I love how popular it's getting, man. It's so cool to talk to people and me be braggy and be like, yeah, I know him. I know
Nathan. Thanks, man. Well, thanks for joining me today. Let's get into it a little bit. If people haven't heard my episodes with Will, you go back to you're one of the first couple episodes that I had of the entire podcast, 150 plus, 70 plus episodes ago. You've been on here and there throughout, and a couple more recently. And we've talked about a number of things. And number one, you have the billing company, in the black, Financial Therapy. You guys are working well with PT owners, improving their financials. But you also have finally, I've been pining for you to do this for so long. You were the expert recruiter when we were partners in our company, and you now have leveraged your knowledge and expertise in recruiting and have started your own recruiting program to help PT owners. So I want to talk about that today and what you can share with owners out there who are listening, who are desperate, typically nowadays, right? That's still that hasn't changed in the last couple of months as the Great Resignation started. But want to share with the listeners exactly what you're doing, how you're helping them become better recruiters. So with that kind of promotion, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I first just want to acknowledge the fact that you are a major impetus for me doing this, because when I came home from Europe and was like, hey, I've got time, I want to create a billing company, you're like, what? Why wouldn't you focus on recruiting? What's wrong with you? And I think the reason I wanted to focus on the billing was because there was this individual that you and I worked with who was just doing billing at a totally different level. And I saw the opportunity to create a billing company that would allow me to coach. Sure. And I loved the idea, because you and I had so many coaches. I love the idea of having a coaching company that was a billing company, because anything we coach on, I already know your finances. So it makes it easier to help on the billing side. And then if you're working with someone like you who work partners with me, then it makes it really easy for you to coach them as well. So right. I went down that road, but what I found was almost, I'd say 100% of the people I coached were like, hey, can you help me recruit? So most of what I coach on is recruiting, even through my billing company.
Right.
And so that is one way people have been working with me, but I got so into it again, and I love it. I think for me, I looked at recruiting as like, I want to be known as a recruiter, and it's not that, right? It's building dream teams.
Right.
So when I wrapped my arms around that, I started taking notes, not just better notes of what I used to do, but like current research on how to help my current clients. And sure enough, my current clients started making hires in these remote parts of the country when they told me it was impossible to hire because they were Medicaid or whatever. We started getting hires. So I started creating a program, hired another coach, which you and I always promote. I hired this master teacher of how to take content and organize it into actionable terms. And then I created Rockstar Recruiter. And that's the program now that honestly, it's funny because I've put very little effort into, I haven't done any marketing or sales on it. And people have just kept joining it. And now they're getting hires, PT hires in areas that they thought were impossible. And man, I got to tell you, it's been one of the coolest things to share that information with PT owners and to see them start making hires again.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things that you noticed there. And that is, number one, you're a coach who has his own coach. So you and I have my own coach. You and I, although we are coaches to owners and business coaches, essentially, we have our own coaches who coach us on our businesses, right?
For sure.
So we definitely walk the walk. And so it's not like we're like, yeah, you get a coach and I don't need a coach. No, we walk the walk. The second is, what's great is you took your expertise in something and are now creating content for others to be successful at doing the same thing. What came so naturally for you, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it wasn't natural to begin with, but what you became really good at is something that now you're able to share with others, and they are able to replicate those things and have similar success. Because for people who don't know our story, recruiting in Arizona at the time was really difficult. And recruiters would tell us that, like, of all the states in the union, Arizona was really difficult to hire for because there was always a demand for PTs at the time. And not only that, we had some clinics that were outside of metropolitan Phoenix, where if PTs wanted to work in those clinics, they had to drive past a dozen or more physical therapy clinics to get there. And we had to somehow justify them passing up all these clinical and positional opportunities to drive out to our remote locations, right? And so we had to become really good at marketing, right? And we made that our goal. We're like, we don't want to be at effect of all these people, of all of the PTs that are not quote unquote there, right? We wanted to be in charge. We wanted to be in a powerful position where we had this bench of PT players. And it was from that germination that you and I really started putting the recruiting plan together, and then you put it into place and implemented it. And we really did over time develop that bench, right? Is that how you recall it?
For sure. And I would just add that I was not naturally good at it. It was something that before you and I had merged in terms of our businesses, I had been struggling. It was the biggest pain of my existence as I was in
right.
this. Yeah, Florence and Coolidge was where I lived. And that's halfway, for people who don't know, between Phoenix and Tucson. It's Indian reservation all the way around. So it's really hard for PTs to want to go drive 45 minutes from civilization to go be a part of the largest jail town in Arizona, which is Florence, that has dozens, like just so many different, it's a totally different world. It was my heart, but on the outside, it didn't look very attractive. So how do you compete with that? And that's where I honestly struggled forever. I remember like being so thrilled when things would finally get balanced with hiring, that when someone quit, it would devastate me, because I knew my life was going to get turned upside down, that I was going to be not involved in the kids' sports, or have at least not have the energy to be the dad or father that I wanted to be.
Right.
And so not knowing how to hire was what really caused me to go into coaching, and ultimately what taught me how to do it. But I didn't get it from PTs inside of our industry. I learned what I learned from almost exclusively outside of physical therapy. My favorite coach that I worked with from Entrepreneurs Organization was this guy who was the lead recruiter in the nation for oil rigs.
Ooh,
so he was the guy that would, oil rigs off the ocean.
In the
go
ocean.
live there for a year in like smelly conditions. You get paid well, but like goodbye friends and family. You're uncomfortable. You're working crazy hours. And working with him was one of the people that like opened up my eyes around, oh, there's a way to create an offering. And on this podcast, I want to make sure that it's really like we're helping the listeners take some nuggets away to go get the PTs that need to be a part of their company.
Right.
Just talk about my program, but ultimately, like there was so much out there that I didn't know. More than anything else in business, honestly, was like how to recruit. Yeah, like there's so much behind it that, unlike other things that we can kind of get through or figure out in our industry with the supply and demand differential, there's no figuring it out. Right. And that shows in the way most PT owners feel, which is how you and I felt, which is like, it's super hard to recruit in this rural area. We had lots of Medicaid, it's super hard to recruit for Medicaid. You know, how do I get PTs to stay on once I've hired them? If I'm lucky enough to hire one, which is a horrible mindset. Like,
right.
Yeah. So I was not good at all. It took a lot of work and time in Florence and Coolidge in figuring that out.
I mean, I'm interested to know, because I think what I'm going to ask you is to share, like, where do you start your PT owners in your program? And I'm wondering what your answer is going to be, because I wonder if it's any different than how we started.
Yeah.
Like changing into a good recruiting physical therapy clinic.
For sure. So in order to recruit, the first place to start is to get really, really, really clear on what makes you different. Like, we have to look inward before we can look outward. And so the very first thing we do is we look at your competitive advantage. Okay. See, most PT owners, they're really humble or like, I'm trying to find the right word that's not that doesn't give a negative connotation, but they're just not self-aware. They don't understand what it is about their practice that's special. But they almost every time I've talked to someone I've worked with, they have something that's unique about them. That is something that they want to promote and message in the right way. But for the most part, if you go look like last month on LinkedIn ads, there were over 80,000 PT job ads posted on LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh.
99% of them are identical. And the
Right.
1% that's different are clients of mine. because because they're all the same. They're just like, and hey, there's no judgment in it. Like we were never trained to do that.
No, of course.
But the first step is we have to look at what makes us different. And that's it always goes to culture. It always goes to like special nuances about the region or the specializations or just whatever it is, but it always comes out of the culture that we help pinpoint, all right, this is something about you that makes you different than every PT practice in the country. And no matter how small or big they are, there is always something to find.
I gotcha. Yeah, that is a little bit different. So tell me than what I expected.
What were you thinking?
This is what I was thinking. Where it started to turn, and maybe you bring this up at a different point in your program, but where it started to turn is we were in Vancouver getting some training, and I was talking to you and Michelle about recruiting, and I said, "Well, yeah, it's hard to recruit in Florence." And you and Michelle both turned on a dime, serious faces, like almost in an angry type of tone, like, "No, it's not. It is not hard to recruit in Florence, Arizona anymore." And I noticed the change because of the mindset and having that type of mentality. Is that a part of that first phase, or is that another step?
That is, so that's part. It's actually the same phase. It's not different. It's when we discover what's valuable about us, we're changing our mindset, and immediately it's part of that. Like, it's two of the same side of the same. It's two sides of the same coin. On the one side of the mindset coin, one of them is acknowledging and identifying what makes you special, great, unique. The other thing is identifying any dialogue that goes against that. So we talk about that mindset piece in Rockstar as a foundational piece. You're dead on, because when someone, I get this still, where it's like in my weekly group coaching call where people are just like, "Well, you know how hard it is to recruit here." I'm like, "It sure is, because you keep saying that." And so what I train on in the training is this idea that, like, we don't have to say it's easy, although that's what we chose to do back in Florence and Coolidge. We chose to say it until we chose to believe it, and then it actually became easy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that just saying it's easy and believing that it's going to be easy just magically makes it easy. What it does is it creates, like, okay, what do I need to figure? It just changes my cause or effect. It's like, how
doesn't it kind of changes the questions
totally
that you ask yourself, right? So when people say it's hard to recruit, well, it's almost like you can stop the conversation now. Whereas if you say it's easy to recruit, I just need to find out who's the perfect fit that would be willing to drive out here and would love to drive out here to Florence, Arizona.
Would be lucky enough to drive out to Florence.
And how do I find those people? Now that opens up a lot of other opportunities that you can consider, and allows you to brainstorm and gives you avenues to move forward through. Whereas when you say, "Oh, it's hard," well, that means you can wrap the bow on it, put it up on the shelf, and you're done with it and let it collect dust, and you don't have to pay any attention to the hard recruiting piece anymore, right? And it also gives you an excuse. If it's hard and my minimal efforts to throw an ad up on Indeed don't work, well, then it's because it's hard.
That's right. This is the thing I want the listeners, if there's one thing they take out of this, is that when you decide that it's hard and you do the bare minimum and you throw it up, like you said, in the present, like, well, it's hard to recruit here. The reason you're saying that is so that you don't feel as bad as you do about not being enough for your company or your family. And that's what it's about. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm too busy. If it's hard to recruit in Arizona, for example, then it's not my fault that I'm not the dad I want to be when I go home and I don't have the energy. It's not my fault when the company is so busy that I don't know what to do. So I'm kind of comfortable in the busy as much as I say I hate it. Like, that reality, I'm hoping, is painful for some of your listeners, and they realize the leadership they have in them, because Rockstar Recruiter is about leadership. It's not about getting someone to hire. It's about becoming the person that everyone has the potential in becoming. and saying, you know what? They would be lucky to work here because I know what I can provide for them and I can figure anything out. I will figure, and I promise every one of the listeners, there is a way to recruit that is absolutely like pushing a button and getting people on board. It is that easy. And it's controversial, but I say it every time. It is easy to recruit. I don't care where your practice is. You just haven't figured out. And that's okay to say, you know what? It is easy to recruit when I figure out how to present this amazing company to people.
Yeah.
But it starts with believing it's amazing and getting rid of that self-talk. That's part of that mindset.
Yeah. It carries over into so many other things, right? Because I have a client, multiple clients who are looking at stepping out of patient care. Maybe they've gotten to a point, but they're not able to, or haven't taken the leap to say, I'm not going to see patients anymore.
Right.
And so they come up with excuses, of course, and they're legitimate concerns, but they let these excuses paralyze them and say, well, I don't know how I'm going to keep them another PT busy if I take off. I don't know what patients are going to say if I'm not treating them personally. I don't know what the team is going to say, or that's just an expense I don't know if I can afford right now. And so using those excuses, similar to it's hard to recruit excuses, allows them to stop the conversation. And then, but it's your job and my job as coaches then to say, well, how you can handle them. Let's talk through it. How can we handle it? Let's change the questions. Like, instead of, well, my patients want me to see them, then maybe the question needs to be, what do you need to do in order to get your other therapists to provide just as quality of care as you do? Well, let's talk about that, right? Or if you're worried about the expense of a new provider coming on, then, well, let's look at the financial numbers. How many patients do they really have to see to cover their expenses and then make a profit for you? And usually when you go down those roads, you can brush away all the concerns, yet it's still hard for them sometimes. And maybe you've experienced this with some of your clients with Rockstar Recruiter or in the Black, but even as you brush away some of those concerns and you address them and you see it for what it really is, they still aren't able to make the step. Have you seen some of that?
Oh, for sure. It's really hard to look inward when you're so busy. What I've come to learn is that our physical therapy leaders are some of the greatest leaders of any industry. I've worked in and out of physical therapy, in and out of healthcare for years. Physical therapy leaders are the least self-aware, least self-confident, most powerful people I've met. And when they get to that, and the way it feels is like they're just super busy. Like, they're super busy. I hear all the time, I'm not that good of a business person. I'm like, you have a successful company running a 20% margin. You're just saying that because you don't know what you don't know around how to figure out your remaining problems. And that's why coaching and getting help is something you and I promote on, no matter what we're talking about. It's like, I didn't figure this out. I have a brother-in-law who owns the 5th largest pest control company in the country. He might be the only person I know who hasn't hired a coach, even though he's been hiring me lately. But the point is though, like, those guys are few and far between. Most of us who find the success that we find comes from help, getting a coach, joining a program, whatever that is. It's part of that journey. And again, recruiting is a real big one, because when you talk about asking the right questions, it's not a question of like, how do I convince someone to be here, which is what a lot of PT owners are asking themselves, whether or not they're conscious to it. It's like, what can I do just to get somebody here as quickly as possible, instead of, who is that lucky son of a gun who gets to be a part of what I'm building here? Because I know for a fact that I do these things really well. And I'm going to give them a chance of a lifetime. Like, answer that question. How are you going to find that person? And then you'll get all sorts of ideas, versus I'm going to pay a company to go. Maybe that's why I stay away from recruiting for so long, Nathan. I never wanted to be associated with a headhunter company ever. And that's what's different about what I do, is that I teach people how to fish. I don't go fishing for them hoping I got the right fish they wanted. It's like, no, I teach you how to build your pole. I teach you how to go in, and it takes a little bit of time, but once you learn to do it, you pull endlessly from the river.
Yeah. It's your recruiting plan.
Yeah.
Totally. It's a recruiting program that perpetuates, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I can totally see myself in that situation as that PT owner who's like, well, I have no clue what sets me apart. I don't. And the scary part is when you say I'm the leader that someone would be lucky to work with, I'm like, I don't know if I'm that leader. I don't know if I'm that guy. So that's be really scary. So then it's easy, right, to throw up an ad on Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever and say, here's a physical therapist job description in my area. Here you go. What we started doing back in the day was really highlighting our values and almost challenging people. If you think you're an amazing worker, we need you. We want you. We only hire rock stars, right?
Yeah.
And so it's cool that you use the word rock star in your program, because that's what we used in our ads back in the day on our Craigslist ads to
That's
date
right.
ourselves.
Craigslist. Yeah. Which was maybe the first indication we weren't doing it right. It was that we were
right. But do you still recommend that, highlighting values, or do you go more back to the uniqueness of your practice?
both, for sure, because your values and your purpose and your vision are always the beginning of what makes you unique, always. And again, like just adding them to an ad is actually better than what most people do, but knowing how to add them into an ad that will attract them is a huge thing. So I do want to leave, so I'll tell you, here's the key. I'm going to give some big picture stuff. And then I want the listeners to walk away, being able to go make some real changes right now.
Okay, cool.
Into recruiting that will be more effective. So here's the big key, the secret sauce to becoming a physical therapy owner who has an endless supply of A players, is becoming a thought leader in your space. It's a really unique way of building your network. As you always promote on this channel, your network is your net worth. Network recruiting is always the most effective. It's always the quickest. They've done studies on this. Indeed has done studies that if you hire someone who knows someone, if you're in a network, you know them directly, or they know someone who knows you. Yeah. You call those people connectors.
Right.
Those hires take 86% less time to bring on board and stay on the team 3 times longer than an average hire. So how do we do that? We create a network. How do we do that? By becoming a thought leader. How do you do that? Well, there's steps to that. There's layers to it, and it's not hard. Anyone can do it. So when it comes to taking all that information and going to the ad, here's some real quick tips I tell people is that, yes, you want to have your values and your purpose be in that second paragraph. I call that the value-based company description. But the first paragraph is a hook. It's a hook.
Sure.
Psychologically, we need something. So the tone of our ad should always be in the you form. It should never be, because look, 99% of those ads here at, Will and Nathan Physical Therapy.
Yeah.
We're looking for a physical therapist. Our company culture is all about quality care, and come be a part of our amazing team. And here's some benefits.
Yeah.
Versus, how would you like to be a part of a team that always has your back? Or depending on what your unique offering is, which is something that we develop, as we help create the actual offer, which is huge. How would you like to treat your patients and be debt free? Student loan debt's a huge trigger for these new grads coming out. So we hook them into our company by remember what's the whole point of the first 2 sentences of a job ad is to make them read the whole ad.
Right.
That's the whole point. And we don't want to be tricky about it, but we ask questions, which engages a different part of the brain. We use it in the you form that makes it, first of all, stand out. Because it's here at, how would you like to be debt free and treat your patients without worrying about debt? Or how would you like to live one of the greatest countries on earth while you're balancing family and home? I would love that. And then you just go right into the values, purpose, and vision and how you fulfill on that hook. And it just builds from there until a call to action. And then there's a call of action at the end that drives them to you. So many of these ads don't even have calls to action. It's just
that's true.
So
send your resume here.
Send your resume if you're interested. Versus, we've got 2 openings. Another concept we talk about, I feel like I'm kind of just going off, but I do this with recruiting.
That's great.
We want to use SUE. SUE stands for scarcity, urgency, exclusivity.
Hmm.
So what really helped at Rise was we stopped acting and believing that we were trying to just get enough people to hire to where we didn't feel like we were losing our freaking minds.
Right.
We started acting like this was a huge opportunity and we only have two. It was such a big difference in perspective, right?
Totally
like,
right.
There was 2 openings in our company and we never meant, it's like playing the game because we want to win versus playing the game because we're afraid to lose.
Right.
We can only recruit successfully when we want to win. And what I will tell people is that when they show up that way on their ads or in person, that's how they stand out from all the masses of PT owners who are suppressed right now, running around, just like so upset that they can't hire. Is that if you're that one person who's like, yeah, I only have 2 more slots open to hire, and I want to fill those by the end of this month. I sure hope that if this aligns to you, you act now, because you sound like someone I'd like to work with. It's like,
yeah.
Where do I, if it's
well, that's much more attractive than being like, I need to find 2 people as soon as possible.
I am desperate to find 2 people.
We need someone now, right? Well, there's your urgency, but who are the lucky 2 when you phrase it in such a way that who are the lucky 2 people who would be who'd be so fortunate as to work with our company? It puts it in a completely different frame.
It does. And it's one of those things too, where like, we have to remember that desperation and urgency aren't the same thing. Desperation is our urgency. Urgency, what we're talking about, is for them to feel the urge to do it. And so I remember one of the things that we did, Nate, I remember that was so powerful. As you know, we would email the state board list, which is something I teach how to do in Rockstar.
Cool.
But we have, in one of the emails I sent out, I remember this one email garnished one hire on its own really fast. I sent out this email and I just said, do you know that we have, it was a matter of, we have 50 positions open in our company, 20 provider openings, whatever. We only have 1 opening right now. Would you like to know why we only have 1 opening? I'd love to tell you about it. I'd love to tell you why people love being a part of this team.
Right.
And so now what I never did was I never lied. I never tried to make Florence seem like, hey, don't you want to come work out in the middle of nowhere? It's really amazing.
You weren't trying to sell it like Paradise Valley.
No, when I used to tell people about the distance, I'd say, yeah, when I in the interview, they'd be like, where are you? I'm like, Florence and Coolidge. It's amazing out here. I would tell them the truth though. I'd say, these are small communities where you get better exposure to multiple diagnoses, a culture of people that you can't believe. Everyone knows, likes, and trusts each other. So what that means is the gym floor is so fun. You have to come out this far to get that experience.
Right.
And that's 100% true. And to this day, I don't drive through those cities without getting emotional, because I still believe that Florence and Coolidge are the 2 greatest cities, and Maricopa. Yeah. are 3 of those areas that are just, you're so lucky to get to work in because of that cultural experience of small town.
Yeah, exactly. And I have people like that. They're like, who would want to work out here in the middle of the sticks, come to these small towns? And it's really in those small towns that there's a lot of really cool opportunity that they may downplay it, but being in those small towns might put you closer to nature, might allow you to be a part of the community and have relationships, familial relationships with community members that you don't get in larger towns. There's not the stale feeling. It's not corporatized, if you will, and when you're in those small towns. So there's really a difference and allows for those owners to really stand out if they take advantage of doing so.
Yeah, and it really does stand out. Most of my clients, I have 2 types of clients in Rockstar. Most of them are like 1, 2 clinic owners in rural areas. I have 3 clients that are large companies. They have 100 plus employees. Yeah. In one case, 100 plus PTs specifically.
Yeah.
And it's just the recruiting angle is so different on both of those because what they offer is so different. I don't even think it's better or worse. One of our clients in a really small town, when I was working with her, I was pointing out how she provided specialization in a way that I hadn't seen before, and mentorship in a really cool way. And so once she was able to get to believe in it, change her mindset, and then message it, she started hiring people. So we have to recognize that you're right. Most people aren't going to want to come work for you. And that's a good thing. We don't want to hire anybody.
Yeah.
That's part of that scarcity mindset.
That's
We
right.
got to get excited about knowing that for every 100 PTs, there's only 2 that we really want, that we want to hire. So how do we talk to those 2 people? Because those 2
Right.
people, they don't mind moving to rural whatever, because they want to learn what you have to give them.
Yeah. It's almost having that mindset that if I know there's going to be 2 yeses out of every 100 people that I talk to, it's a matter of filtering through the 98 no's, knowing that eventually I'm going to find 1 or 2 yeses, right? It's
That's
having
right.
just that kind of mindset, huh?
It is, and there is technique to it. So the
Sure.
first thing we work on is mindset. The second thing I talk about is who. So what the 3 components of the program are: who, what, and where. Who should you be talking to?
Okay.
After you define your competitive advantage, who should you be talking to? Who do you want to hire? Who's your avatar? We define this person. We give them a name. We give them oddly amount of personal detail because we want to get in their heads to generate their fears, their hopes, their desires. Then, see, most PTs start with the what. They go put an ad out. What do? They put an ad out. They go hire a headhunter.
They essentially post the job description. That's all they're doing. Do you know Word? Have you worked with EMRs, and do you have a license? Well, those are like basics. That's what gets you a job.
Right. But if you know who you're talking to, then when you go to the what, then you go create the job offer. Then you go create the job ad, and you create it using this formula that I was just talking about. That's no secret, sharing it. Then you go create the job ad. So by the time we put the job ad out, we are standing out, and we're talking to our avatar in a way to where when they see your ad, it's like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. Like it's almost like we have to realize we want to create an offer that when they look at the opportunity to come over to you, that they'd be stupid not to take that job offer.
Exactly.
That's how we have to create that, right? That power, that clarity. But then once we know like who we're looking for and what we're going to say, then we go where do we find our avatars? Where are the watering holes that they're congregating at? We want to gather, not hunt. So we're not, what we're doing is we're going to places where our avatar is already congregating online, certain Facebook groups, certain LinkedIn groups. And you go there and you start creating thought leadership. And I have this whole messaging technique of where you hook them in to an individual discussion. And so you go to the gathering holes. It's like a lion sitting out the well and watching all the gazelles come. And you go over and you pick the one that looks the most delicious.
Nice analogy.
Right. Yeah, totally. And all those gazelles are hanging over here, and most of the lions are just out there running around the middle of the desert going, I can't find anyone.
That's right. Because you're not at the watering hole.
You don't know where they hang out. You don't even know who you're looking for. Maybe those lions are eating rabbits. I mean, you've got to know what you want. This is getting weird. Is it just me?
We're taking this analogy in different ways than I thought. Because now we're talking about killing gazelles at the watering hole.
We're going to murder and eat.
Those gazelles, watch out.
So what are we talking about? I don't even remember.
I think we're on recruiting.
Oh, that's right.
Anyway. So for those people that are working with you, most of them are in need. Like they need a PT yesterday, right?
Yes.
Right. And do you have to temper their desperation by going through some of these steps first? They're like, I thought you were just going to tell me how to recruit so I could put something up tomorrow. Right. Yeah. Do you have to kind of temper them down and no, this takes a little bit of effort first?
Oh, for sure. I will say this though, there are things that we can do that are quicker that do get results. There are different actions that most people think of that get them something. So I created a module in my program called Hiring SOS. So when people come in and they're freaking out, I'm like, here are easily the most powerful things. And this is all backed with research, by the way. It's not just what we did or I did or have been doing. I've gone through and it's like a weird passion. I mean, I was never this way about studying muscles and bones. I am so passionate about this thing called building a dream team. And it's called recruiting, which I don't love, but it's the who we worked with, Nathan, was the greatest highlight of my career.
That was the fun.
Yeah. When I look back and I miss the patients are right below them, but it was finding that team that created this company that served all those patients that was more meaningful.
Right.
So anyway, the point is that like I go research these things. So when someone comes to me and they're desperate, I'll start them on certain modules based on where they're stuck. But
Okay.
but I do have a percentage of my clients who come on who are just like, you know what, we're doing it, we're just not doing it great. And I'll just start them at the very beginning and then ramp them up. But
Okay.
yeah, there's definitely things we can do to help get people going, but there is some tempering of expectation
Yeah.
because this isn't, I mean, marketing is easier. I'm going to say something controversial on your program. I said
We've
it
never done
earlier.
that before.
Yeah. Recruiting is easy. This is the other thing. The greatest skill, in my opinion, that a leader, that an owner can have is recruiting. Because if you know how to find talent, you can apply that skill to solve any problem you have.
That's true.
Like
I can
if
see
you're not
that.
a good leader, go hire a CEO. If you're not a good marketer, go hire a marketer. In our case, we were homeschooling our kids and we didn't want to put them back in the system. So I used our recruiting skill to create an avatar to hire a part-time teacher in our house. We hired, and our avatar was like, my wife called it. It's like if Mary Poppins and my mom, were the same, we're put into one person, it would be our avatar. And we hired this woman from England who even sounds like Mary Poppins. Like it's bizarre how the process works. And our kids love this experience. So it's like when we can, as leaders, know how to hire people, there's very little else we really have to learn to do.
Yeah, that's cool because it changes things so much when you really get clear about who you want to work with and who that ideal person is, and they've aligned with your values and they've bought into your purpose. That becomes fun. And then growth and productivity are like subsets of that. Like because we're naturally doing what we want to do and love to do, and productivity and efficiency, and it kind of comes from that. It's a result, right? Like going to the source of finding the who's first ends up in this result of a productive, fun, efficient business.
Totally. And it's so powerful because if you think about it, our biggest headaches and problems came from the people side of our business.
Totally.
Our greatest joys, our wins and successes came from the people side of the business. So mastering this is everything. It literally is everything. And so when there are tons of things I still recommend learning. I do believe the greater leader we are, the better we attract people. So I'm not saying it's a silo, but if we were going to rank things in terms of urgency and importance, learning how to attract and hire the right people. Yeah. And then build. And again, we want to not just punch the target, we want to punch through it. We're not done when we hire everybody. Recruiting is a weekly effort. It is, I recommend 1 to 2 hours of recruiting per week, no matter how fully staffed or how big your bench is. Every week, 1 or 2 hours of developing thought leadership, making new connections, building the network, which becomes our net worth. That is a weekly cyclic thing, but we just don't know as PT owners how to do that.
Totally.
And where to start.
That was going to be my next question. So you have people who are coming to you and they need physical therapists to join their team. And maybe it's not just physical therapists, because this could branch out into, I need a new office manager. I need a tech. I need a front desk person. Right. But those, once they've hired somebody, I was going to ask you, what are your next steps as they're continuing to recruit? Maybe they don't have as much attention or don't put as much time into it to recruit, but what you're recommending is that they continue to do so at some level, right? Because we were always hiring, right? We were always doing group interviews for the high turnover positions, tech and front desk. And we always kept our ad out on Craigslist for for PTs. And we were always taking resumes. And you were always going to the schools, right? And talking to the schools, presenting at their conferences, that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming this is part of what you're talking about. Even though you hire those people and you are quote unquote fully staffed, you are continuing to recruit going forward, right?
Always. And honestly, I'd even say you put the same urgency on it. People are so used to like sprinting with recruiting that they don't realize it's a marathon that you never finish. You are always, but if you're doing it constantly, you can lightly jog,
right?
And you can do it, and you can just go indefinitely. You can just, because then it becomes like, I know what to do. I know it works. Yeah, there are challenges sometimes, but when we really got to that cultural place where people loved it, it came from our employees knowing on some level that they were replaceable.
Mhm.
That's something you and I always preached, is that everyone in the company can be replaced, especially us as owners.
Right.
Like,
And
there's
hopefully
no
us
position.
eventually.
Yeah, which ended up happening. And
Right.
ultimately, like, when we're out there recruiting, and our team always knows that we are constantly talking to amazing people. Well, let me tell you, A players, who are the only people we want to hire, they actually love that. They love knowing the exclusivity. Remember, scarcity, urgency, exclusivity. They like knowing that they are a top dog in an organization that not anyone can qualify for.
Right.
And that's part of, we talk about how do we retain better. We think about bonus programs. We think about all these different systems. And I even go into that. But the truth of the matter is, the retention begins with who you're talking to in the first place. Because if you get the right who, and you can build a bench of who's, your retention is going to stick, because people know it's special. And once they know it's special, it becomes way more special than even you. Rise became something so much nicer and more special than you and I had even hoped it would be, right?
Totally.
Is that fair?
Totally. We were talking about this yesterday. Like, there's so much about it that people that are employees made of it that was much more beyond you and me as the owners, and much more than we ever dreamed of. It became something completely different, greater than the collective.
Yeah. And it was the Michelles, the Stacys, the Stephanies, the Tonys, the Taylors, the directors. It was all these people who, like, they created it. Like, we had something really big to do with it, but like, the most important thing that we did was get coaching on anything that they needed, right?
Totally.
But it started with the right who, because if we get the right who will be willing to work with the owner on building the machine, right? Like,
that's right.
And I think that's what we found, is we didn't just find people who we needed. If our avatar, if we could go back in time and really define that person, it would be this person who could see the vision of the company and believe in it, and want to not just put up with all the mistakes, but like want to be a fixer.
Yeah.
It has their brand and flavor to it. And that's what we ended up doing. And that's why it works so well.
Yeah. We
Because
found a bunch of problem solvers, right?
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. I didn't even know my ringer was on.
It's all right. Yeah. And the quote that comes to mind is, the best way to get rid of a bunch of A players is to tolerate C players.
Yeah.
And if you want to bring down an A player who's like, yeah, I'm kicking my butt and I'm willing to do it, but then, and my productivity is at this level. And then you've got this C player who's being tolerated and 50% efficient and getting similar treatment and is allowed to stick around. Well, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to ramp down my productivity and efficiency, because obviously it doesn't matter here. And eventually they're going to get burned out because they're not being fulfilled.
How would you define a C player? I'm just curious.
A C player is someone who, they are unwilling to, well, they'll listen, but they won't make changes. Right. Maybe they'll even a C player, maybe a C, maybe a D player is someone who will speak up negatively in front of the rest of the group if something's presented. Maybe a C player is more the person that doesn't speak up in front of the group, but just is thinking that, and will just do it behind their backs and not implement anything. Right.
I agree with that.
And they could be productive. They could see the number of patients that they're supposed to see, but they're not making any changes. They're not the rah. They're not following up with new programs. They're just going to keep doing things the way they do them.
Right? I love that description. It's so cool, because like, one of the things that I remember, and I'm sure you've seen this with coaching clients, that when someone is having like a holiday party, or they're doing like a charitable event or some sort of like soccer sponsorship, the C players are the ones who are like, yeah, there's no way I'd ever be a part of that. Like, why would I? The A players are the ones who are like, that's awesome. You know what else we could do? And they want to show up. I remember holiday parties being really rough until we found A players.
Totally. Or community events.
Oh, forget it.
Yeah, the C players are like,
where's my money? Like that.
The C players are like, yeah, are we getting paid for this 5K run? Then I'm going to run it as slow as possible.
Totally.
I'm going to
Oh,
love
that was the
this.
worst. That concept, and I just remember that was our reality too. It was like, yep, those are the people that like, that's just what it's like owning a business. Why should they care? And that's, in retrospect now, I'm like, man, it was like at the end where the team is like, what we should do is a 5K. And I'm going to go early to set up. And then they all stay later and they all clean up afterwards. It's like, oh my gosh, I never got used to that last 3 years. I never got used to that.
It was almost uncomfortable. You're like, wait,
Yes.
what? Wasn't it? You're like, what's the ulterior motive here? Because why would you care so much?
Like,
but
I don't care as much.
Right. They cared more than we did, which is
about the
weird.
company, but I will say we did care about them as much as I think we were supposed to. And that was probably what made it work. But it was still funny that they cared so much, right?
And it's in those situations you're like, you guys were awesome. Like, can I just give you another $1,000 for being awesome? Even though they didn't ask for it, they're like, you don't need to pay us anything. And we're like, yeah, but I don't know. I want to show some gratitude somehow. And they're like, you don't need to, we're good. I'm like, are you sure?
They totally made us better leaders. I think that's the coolest thing about bringing in the right people is, I think there was a degree where you and I had to believe that the company and even we were able to provide something super special. We had to get them on board. But the reality is that the only way that we ever realized our potential as leaders was because of the service that they did for us when we were the type of leaders that were smart enough to go get them and find them and bring them in. They helped us become the best versions of ourselves, which almost like was this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like we're going to create this amazing experience for you. And then we find these people who believe we can do it. And then we start becoming that person.
They helped us create that fulfilling, that amazing experience.
It's amazing.
Right. And it's cool because they also, I noticed about those people, they made it really easy for us to fire the C people. Like as we started talking to those leaders who were A players on our team, I remember talking to someone in particular and she wasn't necessarily a leader at the time, but I told her, listen, I'm going to let go of so-and-so. And I want you to know what we need to do in that clinic in order for that not to be a big issue, and who we're going to talk to about fulfilling the things, her responsibilities that need to be addressed. And she was like, yeah, I already know what to do. Like she didn't need a day. She didn't need a week. She was that person that said, well, when I said, well, what is that? She's like, well, I'm going to step up and I'm going to start doing these. And I'm going to give those responsibilities. So-and-so is going to take on these responsibilities, and we can talk to this person over here. And so then I could just go to that person like, you're fired, because we've got everything handled. Because I had those A players who knew how to solve the problems, right? They saw it themselves, right? And they knew where things were falling through and not getting addressed. And so when you knew you had those A players on your team and you approach them about how we're going to address a situation, they come up with solutions.
And then for the first time, we're no longer alone in those moments. That was the other piece of our team, is that when you finally get your dream team, it's no longer about you. And that's hard, believe it or not. I think a lot of PT owners don't realize how they get in their own way because no one can treat as well as I can, or, that kind of attitude. What they realize is that when they're willing to like give up and like lean in to like just surrender is the word I'm actually trying to say, surrender to the power of what could be if they brought on the right people, then this like burden gets lifted where you're no longer alone, which is often our experience as entrepreneurs, is that we're on this island. But when we have a team of people who are equally invested in our win as well as their win, and we're all focused on that experience, then the problems aren't nearly as hard, because you have multiple brilliant minds working on it. Like you said, you have many hands for lighter lifting, and that's when freedom comes. And then you get this bonus called, I love the people I work with. It doesn't have to be like we're best friends to have that either. It's just this like mutual respect and appreciation. And then recruiting becomes super easy. At that point,
that's true.
Recruiting becomes so easy because literally I can go out there and just say, if you don't join this team, you're missing out, and just go meet them. If you're not even 100%, Florence, so what? It's out there. Do you know where those people are? That's where they are. And then they go meet that team, and then they go, wow, that was special. I'm like, yeah, like I've got one more open slot. Do you want it?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I don't want you to want it. Like when we get to that place of like reality,
Yeah.
recruiting is effortless.
Dude. Yeah, we covered a lot of good stuff, man. Thank you for taking the time.
You. No, I appreciate the chance to talk about it, Nathan. And I really, really honor what you're doing. Of course, every time I meet, I'm honored to be a part of the show.
So we've talked a lot about Rockstar Recruiter. Are you going to share with us today how people can get in touch with, get into the program, or do you want to save that for some other time?
Let's save it. No, I'll share it. I want to grow this because I want to create a movement. I want to create a movement where the right PTs who are willing to listen to your podcast, the right PTs who are willing to like surrender to like what can be if they hire their dream teams. I want as many people, those people I get to help as possible. So I will send you a link to Rockstar Recruiter. It's just an automatic program, but here are the 3 components of the program. The first is a group coaching call. That's every week for 6 months. 6 months of coaching. And then you get the Facebook group where we live in daily. So people will post their job ads for group edit. It's an exclusive group. It's really important that we share that with each other. We better each other's company. And then the third component is these online modules that are the pride and joy of my professional career. I've poured my heart and soul with current research into them. So between those 3 components, people spend about an hour a week working on recruiting, 2 hours if they're watching if they're part of that group call. And yeah, that's what they do. They can sign up. And what I am willing to do for anyone who's listening to this call is that I will provide an hour of free coaching with me directly into their coaching situation for the first 5 people who sign up. They just need to mention that they heard about it from the PT Owners podcast.
That's awesome. Cool. And so do you want to share the website as well, where they could go to if they want to check it out?
Yes, I will pull that up right now. It's I don't actually have that off the top of my head, but I can give it to you and you can put it in the link. Is that right?
I know what it is. I'm going to help.
Well, you say it then, please.
It's unlockhba as in boy a.com, unlockhba.com /
yes,
the Rockstar Recruiter. It has to have the word "the" at the front of it. It's not just Rockstar Recruiter. It's unlockhba.com / the Rockstar Recruiter. Yeah, and people can go there and get into the program right away.
And I'm sure you'll share a link in this thing as well.
I will share the link as well. But so for people who don't want to go to the website and find the link, I'll just share that with you now. And awesome. And if people, can they be part of the Facebook group without joining your program?
No.
That's the exclusivity of it.
Yeah, you have. And again, you'll get all the pricing information on there, which is I'm literally doubling my prices in August. And that's not me trying to be exclusive. We have 15 companies that have joined this program, and they're hiring. And I'm getting the feedback on this has been one of the most validating things of my professional career. See other people build their dream teams, and we're adding new layers of value to it. We're looking at adding a virtual career fair component to this, and getting students and new grads in front of my partners. So yeah, it's going to be changing in the next 6 months.
That's cool. And this is March, April of 2022. So put it on your calendar. Make sure people get in as soon as possible.
Definitely.
All right. Cool, man. Well, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it.
Hey, been a pleasure, Nathan. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you.